So a bit of a bummer, but I could see that being again something that gets patched or. Oh God,
It's
listening to us. What? Stop it! Get out of here. I have summoned you here to talk about the future of gaming trademark. I don't know if that's the official tagline or whatever, but you are Joshua Rivera. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, of course.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, word. So we've both been tinkering around with Google Stadia, which is officially out now. We've had it for about a week or so. We have our own review units. And so it's available now to the public, the Premier Edition as it's known,
Right.
out in these streets. You got Chromecast Ultra, which it comes with, which are the only ones that I think as of this recording, support Stadia.
Exactly.
It also comes with a controller. It comes with a USB-C to A cable, as well as a power adapter for you to charge your controller.
Right.
I guess if you're here watching this video, you're obviously curious about Stadia, whether you're a founder or whether you're just like curious to just, I don't know, rubberneck and see this thing as it launches, as it stumbles out of the gate, I would say, putting it very politely.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things that Stadia doesn't have at launch that were originally promised. And you know, back in March when they pitched it at GDC, I remember everybody was sort of scratching their head, and we're also curious because they'd launched before then I forget what it was called, but they had a beta for.
It was like a weird test. It was just sort of like, yo, can you play Assassin's Creed in a web browser?
Yeah.
And it turns out you could.
You could. Yeah,
little
you totally
bit,
could.
at least.
As long as you like plugged in a controller that you already had laying around the house. And they showed it off at GDC with like all these cool features. I mean, they showed off the thing where you could play on any screen. Like here we're playing it on the phone. Now we're playing it on this tablet. Now we went out of our way to get the cheapest computer nearby at a retail store. And here it is. We're playing Assassin's Creed at 60 frames per second. So the long list of things that are not available, at least yet for launch, are pretty glaring. So we have...
It's most of the features.
It's most of the features, right? I mean, I believe Ethan, shout out to Ethan, he wrote a piece about like all the stuff that they talked about.
Not launching with Stadia.
Not coming with, yeah. And it was like, oh, okay, that would have been cool. That would have been also pretty cool. One of them is Stream Connect or Crowd Play, which in theory sounds dope, right? Like you could, one button stream in 4K. You could have people... sort of queue up to play you like an NBA 2K20, for example, like your viewers. So if I'm talking a lot of poop on stream, I could have people come and smack me in Apex Legends or whatever way it sort of gets implemented in. Not that Apex Legends is even available. No achievements. Like we said a second ago, no the current
the achievements are they say they're being recorded in like the back end, right?
Right.
But there'll be an update that has them actually show up in the UI.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like them saying, the achievements are there if you believe.
Yeah.
Like
you just like close your eyes and believe in yourself.
Yeah.
You're the real achiever. You're a real achiever. So that'll be coming eventually, I guess. And they're somehow keeping track of that. Thank you for reminding me. Current Chromecasts will not run Stadia yet.
There'll be an update to the firmware or whatever they call it, a software update, pretty much distributed over the air.
Right.
So you don't have to do anything, pretty much.
Yeah.
And it'll support Stadia. So right now, the only Chromecast Ultras with that update are the ones that come with the Premier Edition or the Founders Edition if you pre-ordered it early.
Yeah. Which is again sort of a thing that I don't know would have been cool.
Yeah. No.
Like if you already had a Chromecast and you were like, hey, all I got to do is buy this controller as opposed to Chromecast Ultra and a controller and whatever else. That would have been something to consider maybe for your launch, but who am I? I don't know. What do I know? No family sharing, so you can't, have multiple people on an account. No buddy passes, so your friends are kind of screwed over if you want to try to sell it.
Yeah, no, which was I think that, does that come with the Premier Edition? I know it comes with the Founders. But like...
Oh, yeah, I don't think it comes with the Premier Edition.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
A Founders Edition, so for everyone who pre-ordered it, like sight unseen, in addition to all this other stuff you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Part of the fun or part of not the fun, but one of the benefits of getting it early was the fact that they gave you a buddy pass so that somebody else would get a Stadia Pro subscription with you, and you could play with somebody else.
Right.
And those will come, they said, eventually. Not I don't know if the timing for that was, a lot of these features are 2020, a vague, next year, which is another month. But I think the buddy passes, they said, will go out maybe in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and then, speaking of which, They're also delayed shipments, so some folks are still waiting for them.
Yeah.
They got pushed maybe to even late November, early December, which is a little frustrating. I would imagine if you pre-order this thing back in June or August, that's got to sting a little bit. And also, at the moment, it only supports Chrome OS tablets and Pixel phones.
Yes.
So
Chrome OS tablets, man. Who has one of those?
I don't know. I will say I love my Pixel phone though.
I mean, they're cool.
They're good.
So like one of the things that reviewers of the game got sent with the Founders Edition package was a Pixel 3a XL.
Right.
Right.
This guy right here.
Yeah, which Paul has right there. It's what do you call it? Because Stadia games will only play on Pixel phones right now. And if you have another phone, you can use the Stadia app, which lets you buy games and sort of like control everything, right? Like sync your controller to your Chromecast and whatnot. But if you don't have a Pixel, you can't actually play the games on that phone.
Yeah. So bit of a bummer, but I could see that being again something that gets patched or. Oh God.
It's
listening to us. What? Stop it. Get out of here. So that's a little bit of a bummer. I'm assuming if you have an iPhone, for example,
right?
Now you have to consider getting another. I mean, you don't have to consider getting this other tablet, but as one of the main selling points of this thing, only allowing for it at launch to a very small slice of the
phone market.
Yeah, the phone market is kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
I will also say, I mean, in addition to all of this, the launch lineup, they added I think a week or so ago, 10 games to the launch lineup.
Like 2 days before launch. So this was like the 17th, right? Today's the 19th.
Right.
It was like Sunday night or Saturday night or something like that.
Yeah.
And the initial launch was going to be like 12 games. And then I think they announced like another 10.
Yeah.
Maybe 11.
So, the launch lineup, in my opinion, leaves a lot to be desired. A lot of these games are games that if you're in games, if you've played games, they've existed for a while, you probably have already played at least a bunch of them.
Right. It's not that spicy of an opinion.
Yeah.
If you play games and care enough to have something that you wanted to play this year.
Right.
You probably have it and played it already.
Yeah. I mean, some of these games are pretty old at this point in terms of when they came out. And, granted, that's where I get confused with the Stadia, and I wrote about it actually on the site where, I mean, the question comes up over and over again about who this is for, and that's the one thing that kind of baffles me, and I still don't know, because even for me, who again, admittedly, I'm a fool, I like to check out the newest, latest stuff.
Yeah.
Even
I'm yes, you're a fool.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I don't want to agree with you too strongly.
I will take that. So I guess I should start with some positives here after having beaten up on it for a while. As someone who was skeptical about input latency and it just kind of not working or there being major problems with it at launch, for me at least at home, and we've had some success now, shout out to Chris D on the IT team, helping me set up a private network here in the office, it works pretty seamlessly. It works really well, and I think that unless you don't know about what's happening behind the scenes, it's really impressive. It's a pretty impressive, technological achievement in my opinion.
Did you ever just forget?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're just sort of you're so used to playing games on a box, right? Like on a PlayStation or Xbox or Nintendo system or something like that. That when it's streaming to your TV, it works so well that you forget until your internet connection hiccups and you're like, oh, I'm doing this crazy cool thing that my internet can't really support.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess for me, I'm one of the weird use cases of I have really solid internet at home, so I outside of the one or two frame skips or whatever, I didn't really notice too much of performance issues. Yeah. But like you said, when you do notice the game being interrupted somehow, whether it's your input or whether the quality turns all of a sudden to 240p or whatever. That can really be distracting, and it can be really jarring. So I don't know, when it works, it's great, but then the few moments where it doesn't work, it really takes you out. And in some cases, I was playing Grid earlier, which finally came out today on launch day, and I know a lot of people still don't have codes and stuff, but even for the single player stuff, I was getting major frame rate issues and skipping and hitching. So it made it pretty impossible to really nail a corner or break at the right time, where for a racing game, you really notice that kind of stuff.
Right.
And even for like Destiny 2, the input latency there, I feel like I've noticed the most because
Same.
I know how it plays on PS4 Pro. I know how it plays on PC, which are the two platforms I mainly play it on. And when I'm sprinting and I stop, I can notice it. When I'm moving, my controller around and I miss a headshot, I can notice it. Like there's like small moments, but for the most part, it works. It works well, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, particularly with Destiny 2, which also I think was the worst one for me. It wasn't that the game looked bad or stuttered or anything like that. I just knew that it took my dude on screen a little bit longer to pull the trigger than it took me. And like when you're playing a game like a shooter like that, I didn't play, in like a competitive match against anybody. I was just doing like PvE stuff, just shooting aliens that are controlled by the computer. So like I could compensate for that.
Right.
But like playing with other human beings, on that connection, it would drive me crazy. And even by myself, just doing solo stuff, it would slowly start to drive me crazy. Like I'd be like, it's just
And I mean, I mentioned Grid earlier because Grid is one of the only. I mean, outside of Guilt, which we I don't think we talked about, but Guilt is one of the only exclusives, if not the only exclusive for Stadia. And it's a cute game. I think it's really nice from the bit that I've played so far, but that wouldn't push me to buy Stadia. No shade to that developer. I think it's a pretty solid game, but
no, it's cool.
It's it's not like a Zelda or a Mario. I think it's pretty obvious. But the reason we bought Grid to test it out was because it has a 40-player mode that is apparently exclusive to Stadia.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, although when I signed on, granted, people probably haven't gotten their Stadias yet, but there was only like me and one other person, and then like 38 bots. But I could see that, like, that's the thing I think that's missing the most here is like exclusive, really cool reasons to own Stadia now. Like they touted the 1,000-player battle royale and all this other cool stuff, and as of right now, like none of that's available yet, and it seems pretty disappointing to have this thing come out. And like you said before, like when it works, it's great, and you kind of forget about it. But I made the comparison in my write-up to like getting a new phone, like that you're super hyped about. After that high kind of wears down of like the magic of this new thing that you have, this new controller and this new Chromecast Ultra HD or whatever, it's just the same games, at least for me in my case, that I've been playing already. So I have a hard time, especially like with the holidays coming up, for example. Like I wouldn't get this for anybody because it's like, hey, here's a thing you can only play with Stadia people. For fun.
And it's like, I don't know, like we spent like a solid 10-15 minutes being down on this, but like I gotta stress it. I mean, when it works, it's amazing. Like I brought the Pixel and the controller and the little like goofy looking mount for the controller that they have. You kind of need it. So I brought that setup to my friend's place. We were having like dinner and just kicking it. And, I pulled them up, and like my friends, they don't like, this crowd doesn't really play video games. So they see me pull this out. They're like, ugh.
Oh, God.
But I was like, trust me, it's amazing. And they were like, we don't care. But like one of my buddies did care, because like, he doesn't have like a console or anything like that. But like he keeps an eye on video games and sort of like, when something cool's happening, like the way I imagine it. Like my pop is kind of like that, where he just like, he doesn't play games anymore. He doesn't care about anything outside of like, this pizzeria has a Galaga. Yeah, I'll see you in a minute.
Yeah. I'll be right back.
But so this friend, like he knows when something cool is happening and like appreciates it, right? So like I showed him like Shadow the Tomb Raider. I'm streaming it from the phone and stuff like that. And he's like, "This is amazing."
Yeah.
And like if like that's pretty much for me what it's for. It's a party trick, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like if I had like infinite money and like didn't have to worry about like the expense of it or anything like that, like I would make a regular show of being like, yo, check this out. I put Red Dead Redemption in my PlayStation 4, have them play it for a minute, then rip it out, throw it out the window, and then like start streaming it from Stadia and be like, yo,
like it would never go to
nothing up my
Josh's again.
sleeve.
Josh is so extra. We're not going to dinner anymore with Josh. No, I mean, but you raise a good point though. Like there was a moment where my partner and I were hanging out at home, and like she was watching a show, and I really wanted to like dig into Stadia, and I had it's not like the usual juggle where it's like, oh, Death Stranding, I want to play Death Stranding, and I need to like, hey, do you mind if I play this tonight? Like, and then she'll run inside and watch it on her laptop or whatever, which I always feel guilty about. But in this case, I was able to just like, it's like the Switch sort of solution of being able to play on the couch, and I put the weird mount thing on my controller, and I put the Pixel in the stand. And I started playing Destiny on my couch, and I didn't really notice any input delay at all, really. And it ran really smooth because most phones nowadays, I guess even the Pixels have like really good solid screens. So that was also a moment of, and I've never really messed with like remote play, only once or twice on PS4, and I haven't really messed with xCloud just yet. But this was like really my first taste of that, and it did sort of feel like, oh, cool, this is like the future a little bit. Like, this is kind of cool. I can play. I can imagine a world where, I'm home one day and maybe I'm like sick or something. I don't want to leave the bed, but maybe I do want to like play a little bit of Destiny with some friends or whatever, assuming, Bungie allows for crossplay or whoever allows for crossplay.
Yeah, well, the cool thing is Bungie does for Destiny 2. You can play your Destiny 2 characters on Stadia in case anybody at home wanted to know.
Well, cross-save.
Cross-save, but
not
you can't
cross-play.
play with anybody.
Right. So that would be
Unless
sick if I was able to play with my friends on PS4 or PC. So until that day comes, I guess for single-player stuff, this thing is pretty neat. Like, it is really cool to be able to play Tomb Raider on my phone or to play Red Dead Redemption 2 on my browser at my desk at work, which is like kind of neat, like the idea of some of the stuff that like it teases at, it's interesting and it actually works. Although I did have a discussion yesterday with my partner because she just started playing Red Dead on Stadia because she was like, at first we were testing it out, but now she's actually really into it. But she was like, wait, so is my save like in the cloud? I can't back that up anyway. And I was like, nope. So she had this moment of like, that's kind of scary. I'll say, yep. Like, imagine having like a 70-hour save.
Yeah.
Where is it?
And you're spending like physical media money, on Stadia. Like the Red Dead Redemption costs $60 on Stadia, and you don't get jack. You don't get you don't get like a distro. You don't have anything to save anything on. It's all in the cloud. Your screenshots are saved to the cloud. It's all tied to your Google account, which is both convenient and a little scary.
Yeah.
But somebody out there watching you.
Yeah, they're listening.
But like it's a big trade-off, right? And it's also just sort of like, the big question with, not even question, but like the thing that you remember with like streaming services like Netflix and everything like that is that you don't own anything anymore. Even when you buy a Blu-ray, pretty much, that Blu-ray is sort of like just a license too, so like that's lousy. And also just sort of like, if you want a single-player game, if you want to play a single-player game, do you really want to need an internet connection to play it?
Right. Yeah, that's true.
And then if you're also the type that like cares about just how things look, you have very little input into visual settings. It's really frustrating because like a lot of fancy TVs have HDR. HDR is a pain to set up properly. It's always going to, if you don't know what you're doing, you don't get it calibrated, it's going to look washed out and weird and stuff like that. And Stadia is only going to make that look worse. If you haven't properly calibrated your TV for HDR, Stadia is going to make everything look awful.
I was disappointed too when I booted up. I mean, so here's like my emotional journey of Red Dead. So I get an email that's like, oh hey, you got a Red Dead code. I was like, sweet, like this is awesome. I like that game. So I punch in the code in the browser. I redeemed the game. And I was able to immediately just press play and play the game.
That's cool.
That's pretty fucking cool, in my opinion. Like, there's no, I mentioned it in my write-up, but as someone who plays Modern Warfare a lot, I always have to freaking wait in the menus for shaders to install. I'm like, oh, God. I go make some tea, come back, it's still installing. I go, I don't know, do Ring Fit for 10 minutes. So that's really cool, right? But then I boot it up on my TV, on my 4K HDR TV, and I'm pumped to get into it. And it's like, it looked good. Like to my untrained eye, I have nothing to really compare it to outside of like my Pro. I don't have an Xbox One X, and my PC really can only handle 4K, but like at medium, maybe low settings if I'm lucky, and definitely not for something like Red Dead. So I was like, oh, this looks good, but the frame rate was like capped at 30, and I was like, that's a little disappointing after all that GDC teraflop talk of like, we got all the teraflops and we're gonna run everything at 8K, and I'm like, all right, like, okay, well, I'll see when I believe it. And until now, I don't really believe it just yet. Like, I know that that's something that I can probably work on and it'll get better, but I don't know. There's so much that this launch leaves like at the door, and it's disappointing. Like it would have been so much of a better, like an easier sell rather, if it came out and I was like, yo, any smart TV that has access to whatever channels like YouTube and stuff, you can download Stadia, you can put it on existing Chromecasts or whatever. There's still a lot that, like, I mean, I talked about the need to plug in your controller to the phone, which you didn't even mention, and then plug it into the PC to play on your browser.
Right. Because technically you have to stop it on one screen, right? And then start it up on the next.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, where it's just sort of like it's not that seamless. It's pretty
Right.
quick. It'll take
Sure.
you less than like 30 seconds, right?
Sure. Sure.
But like it's not that magical thing
No.
that
No.
they showed off.
Not yet. I am really curious in the future of Stadia. I think it's pretty obvious that Google has the money to throw at this thing and work on this moving forward. But like, I'm curious if they have taken stock of things like Games Pass, which in my opinion is like a much better deal for $10 a month.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're offering Samurai Showdown for November, so that's kind of cool. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that game's pretty sweet. I played a little bit of it. It actually worked really well. But I'm wondering if they pivot, if they offer a subscription service, what they do from here on out. Because my thing with xCloud right around the corner, with the PlayStation 5 and the next Xbox next year coming out, this definitely seems like they're trying to get out ahead of whatever comes out next year. I'm not sure why they decided to do this. Like I can't figure it out, and it kind of bugs me. It's like a puzzle that I can't solve, and there are probably people who make 4 times as much as I do to figure that out. But as it stands right now, it's like not something that I could recommend, and I don't know at what point does it become something that you're like, oh, you should get Stadia. It's actually an easy way to play games at 4K or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like it's weird, right? Like I see a lot of that. Like you're again, you were talking about with your piece. Who's it for? And then you see a lot of like people like online, like speculating, like, oh, they didn't do their research, they didn't, they don't know this sort of thing. Why do they not have any exclusives? Yeah, do they not know what gamers want? I don't know. It's a tech company. Google's a tech company. I think they, one of the complaints about Stadia right now is that it's like you're paying to get into a beta.
Yeah.
And like that is kind of a scam, if you ask me. But also, it's a scam that keeps the amount of people in Stadia manageable, probably, because like one of the questions I have,
interesting,
is like when we were playing, it worked pretty well, right? Now that it's available to the public, right? Like if everybody who wanted Stadia got one, will it still work that well? I don't know. If they just opened the floodgates right away and launched with everything that they said that they were going to have, would Stadia work today? Probably not. I don't know what Google's goal is with this tech. We know Google likes data and finding more of it, right? And like some of the marketing hype around Stadia is built on sort of like, is data oriented, right? Like one of the features that we're very like skeptical of is the way that they reduce lag by like
predicting,
like predicting what you're gonna do, which is like on one hand it's marketing BS, but on the other hand
it's blast processing. What are you talking about?
But on the other hand, it's sort of like anticipating user actions is the sort of like data thing that Google would be interested in. And then it's like on the other hand, what they have here is pretty cool. Have you ever played PlayStation Now, like stream games through that?
Yeah, it works.
Like that? It works, but like you're aware that you're streaming a video game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'll be playing some old JRPG, like I don't know, White Knight Chronicles. That like you can't get anywhere.
Deep cuts.
Yeah, but like it's on PS3. On the PS Now streaming that you can do on your PlayStation 4, like right now.
Yeah.
And like. It's impressive that it works, but also like I know I'm streaming a video game. There's like input delay and all that nonsense.
Some textures are a little muddy.
Yeah, exactly. With this one, like we said earlier, you can forget that you're streaming a game, and that's kind of wild.
Yeah, especially if you're like in bed on your phone. Mm-hmm. That's pretty neat. I think like my final question here would be like, okay, let's say in 6 to 8 months, this does pick up steam. It has a redemption arc the same way that some games have had, right? Yeah. And people all of a sudden are championing Google. Well, not that I really see that happening. But I'm wondering, like, at what point do we get, like, the first Netflix original hit, that's like a Stadia exclusive that, like, people are freaking out about The Mandalorian on Disney+. And as far as I know, unless there's like a Blu-ray that's out there with The Mandalorian on it, or maybe there will be because it's Disney and they want to kind of, make you buy everything. Yeah. Want to make you buy little baby Yodas. At what point you can't stream The Mandalorian or view it any other way besides signing up for a subscription. Mm-hmm. So like, it kind of scares me a little bit, especially like, when we're talking about a tech company whose main business is your data and collecting that data and finding new ways to like, you know, inject themselves into your life. And in this case, like now it's being connected to like my Google Assistant and my YouTube history and all this other stuff that I
Right.
can only imagine.
Mhm.
I'm curious about, yeah, like what it does for that kind of future.
There's definitely a market for being like, hey, you know, I'm what's the demographic, like 18 to 24, 18 to 32,
Or
some
35, yeah,
35,
yeah.
something like that. You know, like I'm in that demographic, you know, male 18 to 35. What kind of games do I play? For how long? What do I jump to after that? What do I do after I turn off a game? You know, do I go straight to YouTube? Do I watch a show on Netflix? Do I power down? You know, like all these things are connected to my Google account. Google can pretty much paint a picture of my day. I use Gmail for work. I do all this. Like, I don't know if other video game companies have that sort, like Microsoft maybe. Is probably the only other one that might have that level of embeddedness and, like, you know, regular, you know, the life of an American male.
Yeah.
But like, it's I would say it's safe to say that like Google's interests in video games are very different than video game companies' interests in video games. And like, you know, it kind of just depends on what they want out of that, which they're not going to make public. And like, does that mean Stadia sticks around, you know, for a long time? Maybe. Does that mean that Stadia is an experiment that's only here for 2 or 3 years? That's also a maybe. But like, that cool game that, you know, makes everybody want to have, you know, the Mandalorian of Stadia. That happens if they decide to just, like, you know, eat a lot of money. You know, like Sony makes these great exclusives because they're willing to let developers like delay stuff. Like The Last of Us 2 seemed like a lock for February,
Yeah.
and now it's not. You know, and like that's gotta hurt. You know, that's shifting over into another like financial quarter. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like investors have to adjust expectations, all that stuff like that. These are big business decisions. And so like you have to, you know, the company with, you know, fronting the money has to be willing to take hits. And like Google seems like they can take hits.
A lot of hits, man.
So it all depends on what they want, you know?
Yeah. Well, time to go play some more Destiny on my Pixel.
With like 7 other people.
Listen, man, I gotta add you. You're like one other friend on Stadia
Yeah, we
right
haven't
now.
even added each other yet.
Yeah, man, I'll send you my friend code or whatever. I'll send you a Gmail invite, a calendar invite.